Hey guys, Joshy here. What would normally be BJ on game day is now BJ on race day. The new Supercoach racing game has launched in the past couple of weeks. We will see the start to the Spring Carnival and the Everest Carnival in about 2 weeks' time, and that will kick off the Supercoach racing. So, guys, anyone who is watching at home, you will be normally used to seeing us do the Supercoach NRL coverage. But we're going to do a little bit of a switch and go to Supercoach racing. So I've always been a mad punter. I've owned plenty of dogs and racehorses and things like that. So I just thought I might lend my expertise to some people and give you a few tips and pointers before the season starts on this one if anyone wants to jump on board. So, guys, basically how it works now. A few years back, the Tab ran a competition called Star Stable.
Yeah. Is there a word for that in English? Smusk.
Smusk is like the perfect word because it sounds like sound.
Yeah. Smusk.
Is that the Swedish word of the day?
Yes. Swedish bonus word of the day.
Swedish bonus word of the day is smusk. It's chewing loudly.
I don't know if anyone out there played in it, but very, very similar to that. A few differences, and we'll run through those as well. But it's basically you're given a salary cap like you do in the NRL, and with that salary cap, you basically have to pick a team of horses that run each week over the Spring Carnival, and the more winners you get, the more points you get. So that's in general what it is. But it's basically 15 race meetings across the Spring Carnival in Sydney and Melbourne. It's through 9 rounds and it's run over 7 weeks. So it's a little bit more, I guess, confusing than regards to the NRL season, as you don't have weekly rounds because towards the end of the competition, the rounds are actually run over different days, whether it's a Tuesday, whether it's a Thursday. So the lockouts can become confusing. But as the season goes on, we'll get you guys prepared for that and we'll run through all of those sort of timings and making sure you're not caught unawares by trade deadlines and things like that. So, look, guys, what's at stake? The winner of Supercoach Racing picks up a cool $25,000. So not as much as the Supercoach NRL, and I'm sure the numbers won't match around the $130,000 we get each year for the Supercoach NRL, but hopefully we can get close to that. Weekly winners, now you'll have round winners just like you do in the NRL. Unfortunately, the prizes are nowhere near as lucrative as the NRL. A weekly round winner only picks up a 3-month subscription to KO Premium, which is about $100 worth. So really, it's either first or last in this one. You pick up the $25,000 if you win. Otherwise, you can just sort of write off second place. I think last week in the NRL, the guy got about $5,000 for running second. Supercoach Racing, you pick up nothing.
Third prize is you're fired.
But the rules. As I say, we do have a salary cap condition. So you've got 10 horses to pick and you've got a salary cap of $2 million. Now, the pricing on the horses is based on their ability, and it's very, very much like Supercoach where you've got, I guess, the best players costing more. Now, the top horses in Supercoach Racing will be $500,000, priced right down to a horse at $50,000. Now, out of all the ones in between, you've got to find 10 horses each week to make up that $2 million salary cap. You may use it, you may not, but no doubt with the ability of obviously the better horses costing more, you probably will use that $2 million every week. Now, one thing that's a little bit different to Star Stable when it was, and is a little bit different to NRL Supercoach, is you have unlimited trades. Now, this is huge, guys. For anyone who hasn't played this kind of game before, unlimited trades mean you might have seen a few guys online on different Facebook groups so far posting teams and posting sort of stables. They mean nothing. At the end of the day, you may fancy a few horses here or there, but if they're not racing that week, there is no point having them in your stable whatsoever. So very, very much a key that every week you should pick a new 10 horses based on the fields that have come out. Now, the fields that come out in racing are basically every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on the importance of the meeting. What they will do is they'll take nominations and acceptances for these races, and then fields will be declared. So you may have 20 or 30 horses that nominate for a race, but there's only 10 or 12 spots, or how many of it may be. So, for example, the Melbourne Cup is 24 horses in the race, but when the nominations opened months and months ago, you would have had about 400 or 500 horses initially nominated. Now, on your bigger races like your Group 1s and things like that, the nominations start a long way out. So the first big race in the Supercoach racing is called the Golden Rose, and that's on the 28th of September, and that's run at Rosehill Gardens. So that'll be the first big race meeting. For that race, nominations for this one opened months and months ago, and they would have started at a few hundred horses, and when it comes to race day, there'll probably be about a field of 14 or 16, something like that. So, guys, basically, you've really just got to sort of pay attention every week. Much like you check team lists on Tuesdays for your NRL Supercoach, you'll have to check the fields for your Supercoach racing. So the official fields should come out on a Wednesday. Now, the racing most of the time will be on a Saturday. There's one or two, I think, Friday night meetings in there, and there's also a Sunday meeting, but the fields will come out on a Wednesday for a Saturday meeting. When you get towards the end of the season, at the end of the 7 weeks, and you get to the Melbourne Cup week, you've got a couple of different ones. Obviously, Melbourne Cup falls on a Tuesday, and the fields for that come out on the Sunday before. So you're only given a 2-day window there. The Thursday is, I can't remember what the Thursday is, whether it's Derby Day or Oaks Day after that. And you've obviously got to be prepared because those fields will come out on the Wednesday, I think it is, the day before. So timing for this one is that little bit more important, but a little bit more confusing than NRL Supercoach. So unlimited trades, very important to have a different team each week that'll get you the most amount of points for that round, okay? Make sure that your horse is obviously racing that week, and then that'll lead into what the better races are to be in or what the worse races are. Now, what I mean by that is your Group 1 races, which are your biggest races, they get the most points for Supercoach racing. So a winning horse in a Group 1 race will score 40 points, and it goes right down to 10th, and that 10th horse will score 4 points. For a Group 2 race, the scoring goes down. For a Group 3 race, it goes down again. And then for a handicap or a benchmark race, it goes down even further. So basically, like you'd have first grade in football, reserve grade, things like that, those different levels of racing earn you more points. With that, the scoring change, I guess the pricing changes are a little bit different as well. Now, you won't see too many price changes in Supercoach racing, bar for horses that finish first or horses that finish last. Now, a horse that finishes first in a Group 1 will go up $50,000. It'll go down $50,000 if it finishes last. A Group 2 and a Group 3 race will be plus minus $25,000, whether it finished first or last. And then a handicap race won't change at all. Now, the reason this is important is every week as you change, if you've picked a winner, you'll obviously have that increase to your salary cap. But then if you pick a last the next week, you'll obviously have that decrease. So it's very much an advantage, obviously, to pick horses that win because that'll add to your salary cap if you trade them out. Now, one thing to consider is horses don't race every week. Horses definitely have a grand final. Over the 7 weeks, the most you'll probably see one single horse race is 3 times. Now, horses, when it comes to carnival time, definitely have their grand final, I guess, and pardon the pun, but they're Melbourne Cup. So a lot of these horses will be preparing for Melbourne Cup, which means that they'll run 2 or 3 times in the carnival beforehand, but they won't necessarily be trying to win those races because they won't be at their desired distance. So the Melbourne Cup run over 3,200 metres. A horse might be running beforehand in the Toorak handicap or something like that at 1,600 or 2,000 metres. That's probably not its ideal distance, but it needs that as a warm-up to run well in the Melbourne Cup. So that's one of the hard things about racing is really following those form lines. So I'll run through that a little bit more in a second. One thing with regards to the scoring as well is jockeys. Now, the jockeys are actually scored on a 3-2-1 basis. What that means is if your jockey wins a race, he scores 3 points. If he runs second, he scores 2 points. If he runs third, he scores 1 point. It doesn't matter what the race is or what the race is worth, whether it's a Group 1 or a Group 2, that 3-2-1 system still stays the same. So obviously if your jockey rides 4 winners and a second in their meeting, you'll get 4 times 3 for the winner, which is 12, plus 2 points for a second. So he'll get a total of 14 points for that day. And that obviously contributes to your total as well. So you really want to make sure that you've got a jockey on the day that's got rides in as many races as possible, or if they don't have rides in all the races, if they've got, let's say, 5 races out of the 8, make sure that those 5 races are really key runners. So they may not be horses in your team. They don't have to be. You just want to have to make sure that they're really, really good horses. What do we got? No captain. There is a captain. There you go. There you go. Something I've learned. There you go. Thank you, Bogan. I actually hadn't read that, and I don't know if it was something that I saw in Star Stable years ago.
Let's get off. Oh, I love these pants. You have a purple butt.
But you have a captain horse, so you obviously get double points for whichever captain horse you do pick. Now, speaking of the first meeting in the Golden Rose, there was a race run today at Rose Hill called the Run to the Rose. Now, this was only an 8-horse field, and the 3 horses that finished first, second, and third in that, coincidentally, are actually the 3 horses that are the first 3 favourites in the Golden Rose. So, as I say, the field is not set yet. It's still got about 50 or 60 nominations, which means they have to dwindle it down. But all expectations for those 3 horses that they will move from this race they've run in this week to run in that Golden Rose then. So that will be the race on that first Saturday that'll be worth the most. So if you can pick the winner in that race, much like you'd get your Teddy as a captain, you'll get double the points for that. So let's say Bivouac, which is the favourite for that race, Bivouac. Let's say it wins, then you'll get obviously double that 40 points for the Group 1. What we'll do there, and I want to run through some more tips, but each week you're going to get a video from us, guys. The first week's video will actually build my team. So I'm going to build my stable for that first week of my 10 horses, and I'll do that each week for you. Now, whether we do a separate video each week from that, I'm not too sure, but I'm going to declare my team. Look, I love a punt, but I definitely don't have any inside information. So I've known a few trainers in the past and obviously had horses and dogs before, but yeah, there's no inside information here. I'll be giving my tips on what I think form is and things like that, but I'm definitely no Tom Waterhouse. But what I will do each week is just give you a few horses maybe you want to follow. I'll give you a couple of jockeys that you may want to follow, and we'll obviously just go through the pros and cons of things like that. Each week as well, we'll give you any news updates. So one of the big things in horses is some horses, you know, just like football players can get injured, can get sick. You'll see their plans change. Horses may need to win a race to qualify for their grand final later on. So that could always be a key as well. So basically what we're going to do each week is teach you to read the form a little bit and just know what to look out for in these races. So we'll go through reading the form. Things like basically, you know, when you look up the form on a horse, it will give their last few starts, whether it's 1, 2, 3, so they've finished first, second, third. A 0 in their form means they've finished 10th or worse in a race. Okay, so obviously a horse like that you might want to avoid. Obviously a horse like Winx, you know, for so long ran all those races in a row where it won and won and won, and she's probably the best we've ever seen. Track bias. So again, we'll get into a few terms here where a little bit people might not be aware for, but track bias is basically how a track runs on the day. This is a little bit harder to judge because obviously we've got lockout. You may not know the track bias, but for example, the 4-day Flemington Carnival at the end, which is the Melbourne Cup Carnival, you may see a bias on the first day that'll lead you to pick certain horses on the next 3 days. So track bias means that all the leaders will win. So anything that leads has more of a chance to win, or anything coming from behind can win. So horse races are run at different paces. So when a horse goes really fast up front, it really sets it up for the horses to come from behind. When a horse goes slow at the front, it really sets it up for it to sprint in the last 300 or 400 metres and it makes it tough for the horses to come from behind. So we'll run through all that, and week to week we'll try and give you some tips there. Big thing to look out for are wet trackers. What that means is every track, when you have it come to race day, has a rating. So whether it's a fast track, whether it's a good track, whether it's a dead track, a slow track, or a heavy track. Now, based on these, you will see some horses race and some horses not. Some horses are just genuine wet trackers. Other horses can't run on wet ground. So you can very much see a completely different horse based on that ground. The other thing to look out for is Sydney and Melbourne run different ways. So Sydney run in a clockwise direction, whereas Melbourne run in an anti-clockwise direction, and some horses you get don't run either way or need a little bit more training. So you might see a horse race in Sydney to begin the carnivals and then transfer down to Melbourne. So obviously there's a bit of confidence there that they do that, but some horses don't. Each week we'll run through a few trainers to look out for. Sometimes they target their horses for certain races. Now, we spoke about Winks. Her trainer's Chris Waller. Now, he's been probably the premier trainer in the country for the past 4 or 5 years. He's got the largest stable in the whole country, has a lot of runners. So you can always, sort of pick his horses in Sydney and know that they're going to run well because he just prepares them so well. And there's a few trainers in Melbourne the same. Gay Waterhouse in Sydney as well does a fantastic job. One thing we'll point out each week are market movers. So, as I say, when the fields are released on a Wednesday, betting begins on them straight away. So anyone who does punt, a horse will open up a certain price. Now, I'm not talking about the price with regards to the app. I'm talking about what you actually can bet them on the tab. So let's say a horse opens up $10, and the owners or the trainers know something that other people don't, that the horse is going to run really well. They might start betting on it straight away, and all of a sudden a horse that's $10 might come into $5 or $4. So we'll run through some market movers. There could be some cheap horses in the game at $50,000 or $100,000 that are well backed that might be worth getting on. So again, we'll run through a few of those things. One thing I want to point out, and probably one of the final points I'll leave you with, is the Everest. Now, the Everest was first run 2 years ago. It's been won the first 2 years by Red Zell. Red Zell's a great sprinter. It's a race run over 1,200 metres, so it's a very, very quick race. It's open up to the best sprinters in Australia, basically. It isn't a Group 1, a Group 2, or a Group 3. Now, the Everest doesn't actually have group status at all. So what I am wondering, and I don't have any clarification yet, but I'm going to look into this as the competition goes on. The Everest is run on the 19th of October, which I think is about round 4 or round 5 in the competition. If that's the case, the winner of the biggest or the most expensive prize money race in Australia will only get 18 points if it wins for Supercoach Racing. So whereas a Group 1 winner, which could run for 500,000, whereas the Everest winner wins 6 million, might get 40 points in Supercoach Racing. So, guys, we will clarify that as the competition goes on because it's something that you may not know. Most people would assume that the Everest, being how much it's worth, and I think it's the 3rd richest race in the world, would be a Group 1 race, but it's not. Guys, round 1 starts on the 28th of September, so we're 2 weeks away from that today. As I say, we will run a team reveal or a stable reveal, and we will post that video first before round 1. And then we'll basically, just run a video each week. So anyone who wants to jump on board, give us a like, give us a follow on YouTube, and that way when you subscribe, you can get those notifications that the videos will be up. I will post them on a couple of Supercoach Racing Facebook pages each week, so anyone who wants to follow there can too. We will have a BJ on RaceDay Game League. Now, BJ on RaceDay, hopefully it'll become a thing. Hopefully we get plenty of guys join. The initial league number will come up on your screen now. It is 733-727. Now, 20 people in the league, just like the NRL Supercoach. If that does fill up fairly quickly, we're going to release that about 2 weeks beforehand. So if that does fill up fairly quickly, we will release another league code. For now, we're not going to do any sort of dollars or anything like that. We're not going to sort of make any promises. We just sort of want to get that reaction to the first season, see how it goes, and then obviously if Supercoach racing kicks on in years to come, we may bring out some money comps and things like that for there. But if that first league fills up really quickly and anyone misses out, we will create leagues after that, whether it's a second, whether it's a third, whether it's a fourth. We'll keep going. So, guys, if you've got any questions, feel free to comment. Direct message me on Facebook. Most of the guys will see me on the NRL Supercoach pages. My name's Joshua King. It's how it appears on Facebook. So feel free to reach out to me. But other than that, yeah, thanks for joining in for the first video. Hopefully there'll be plenty more to come. As I say, I'm not in the know at all. I don't know any trainers or anything like that with tips or such. I'm just going to give my opinion and as a punter, I guess. So, yeah, we'll see you all next week.